Hello, Josh. Thank you very much indeed for joining me today on what is, I think, the 18th Housing Sector podcast. You had me on your podcast a while back. Anyway, before we could talk about that, a little bit of an introduction. Who are you?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Ben. Appreciate that, mate. So my name's Josh. I am the MD at Trust Hire Recruitment, and we are a permanent recruitment solution across social housing and across the health and social care sector. Look at the way we look to work is slightly different. We're small, more consultancy approach, where we look to offer more than just kind of recruitment. We're looking at kind of coaching and improving clients retention options and stuff like that. I think there's no point in recruiting if your retention is your main focus. Let's get that bit fixed first, and then we can look at what gaps need to be plugged before we go on, really. So yeah, that's a bit of an intro about me.
Well, that's a very sound decision. That sounds like a very sensible way forward. And obviously, there's benefits for you if your guys are in there. You've got longevity. You're choosing the right candidates, and that speaks volumes about who you are as an organisation, I suppose. Now, I had a podcast with Garant from Platform Housing, and we talked about one of the problems that.
He's also he's also been on my podcast as well. So the both of you.
There you go. He's a fan of us both. We're a fan of him.
Yeah.
We were talking about the issues, the struggles of employing people, making the housing sector a sort of place they want to go and work and an exciting career. And we
Yeah.
sort of touched on the fact that, many of the jobs that the young are thinking of haven't even been invented yet. How do you attract talent towards the housing associations?
Yeah, I think there's we just a bit of we recruit, like I said, across social care and social housing, and they both have the same issue when it comes to kind of bringing people over into those fields. And a lot of it comes from a misconception about what is actually on offer. Talk about social housing, you know, their biggest struggle is across kind of frontline staff,
Mm.
but actually kind of there's not enough work done, I think, through kind of schools or colleges or unis to really showcase the opportunities that are within that field and within these organizations. We work closely with one lady actually who started off as a frontline worker, worked all the way up to chief exec, and now is running her own small consultancy firm. So it just, more stories like that, which there are out there to kind of showcase what the opportunities are. And it's not just kind of a frontline role without any career progression. There is opportunity for the right individuals, but I
Yeah.
think it's really honing in on that initial piece when people are younger, thinking about what their career looks like and making this a viable option and an attractive option. And I think there is work that needs to be done around kind of pay packages and benefits and what that looks like. But ultimately, it's about removing that kind of removing that image that currently is hovering over social housing.
And look, I'm probably in some small way part to blame for that image because my journey started with my own landlord, and I've been very much calling them out. And to my surprise, as I've grown within this sector, I'm noticing that there is a lot of great talent out there, and a lot of people who are dedicated and do see it as a vocation. How do you filter out the people who just sort of bounce around from association to association and perhaps bring that negative culture which will affect your retention?
Yeah, and it's something that we've been looking at more and more. And I think there needs to be a big piece around kind of leadership. But how do you know what drives leadership? And that tends to be people's values and behaviors.
Mm.
So there's a lot of work you can do now around kind of really doing assessments or showcasing what people's values and behaviors are, not just what their experience and skill set says, because I think that's where you can get the right skill set, but the wrong person. And
Yeah.
that happens, that's quite frequent, not just across social housing. That's a recruitment wide issue. But I think, if talking about social housing, values that, we're talking about people that, are a lot of the people that use social housing providers, for example, are vulnerable people that need support in one capacity or the other. So actually having someone that shares a particular value and a particular behavior is fundamental to creating them leadership teams that can support down and make sure the frontline staff have the right support, etc., to deliver what they need to deliver to make, these homes safe, homely, people want to come back to. And do you know what I
Mm,
mean? And I think it's a lot is around that values and behavior that I think gets missed quite
yeah.
frequently. And I think that to me is more important than skill set and experience, because a lot of things you can teach, but it's very hard to change what someone believes in their own mindset. So I think that's where a lot of focus needs to be.
Do you find there are some providers who you've seen the same thing? I mean, I spoke to Marie about this a while back, about that sort of needing that emotional intelligence, but that support. So they've got, because it is taking on a lot of bad news some of the times. You are in the front line, my house is damp, my kids are cold, my roof is leaking, my dad's ill, the fatigue that they must be under. Do you sort of carefully pick your clients to make sure that the support network is in place for their frontline staff?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is fundamental. And I think there's and stuff that we're looking to do in 2025 and onwards is actually how we can bring that into our offering. What can because you want to be able to provide that, but also a lot of organizations have budget restrictions, and some of them want to do the right thing, but they
Yeah.
don't have the purse strings to be able to do that. So actually, what can we do to offer kind of maybe more of a coaching and mentoring, a well-being service as well to kind of add that extra layer? But fundamentally, I think those frontline staff, you just talk about them for the moment, need someone to unwind to vent to sometimes, but then it tends to be their managers are under a lot of pressure because they're getting it from above, but then they have got no one. So it becomes this cycle of
Mm.
burnout and resentment, and everyone's just trying to do the best with not a lot. But I think there's definitely I've seen a lot of good work, but I still think we're at the early stages of what that needs to look like in terms of a bigger picture. And it all comes back down to what's going to deliver the best service to those people that are relying on you. And
Yeah.
all decisions need to be based around what do we need to do to support the team that support those? Because fundamentally, that's what it comes down to. There's a purpose behind the organization, and that can't be forgotten. But I think when there's so much pressure and burnout, that the company's core value sometimes gets lost amongst the day-to-day running of things. But for us, that is important. And I think more organizations that support housing providers with recruitment could offer more services themselves to kind of support what they're doing.
It's again difficult, isn't it? Because nobody gets into a job and deliberately fails. But when the mechanisms aren't quite in place for you to succeed, you're sort of failing through no fault of your own. How does that affect people?
Yeah, massively. Everyone's, I can't imagine there's been many people that haven't gone into had at least one role that, they feel like they've been set up to fail from the moment they walked through them doors. And I think there needs to be, I think a lot comes down to how they are integrated into teams. I think everyone talks about onboarding, for example, but onboarding to me doesn't stop once they pass their probation. That should be an ongoing cycle of, right, 3 months in, 6 months, 9 months, where you at? What support do you need? What's your manager offering? What's this? What's that? Do you know what I mean? I think for
Yeah.
me, it's probably needs to be changed from onboarding, but the initial 3 months, yes, are crucial because it gets them embedded into the team. And naturally, the more they feel included and the more support they've got, their ability to be successful in their particular role is going to strengthen massively. But I think the danger is what happens after that 3 months to keep them here, where you see so many people lose that support, that slowly and slowly and slowly their work just keeps decreasing. And then that has a knock-on effect because that workload that's been decreasing has to be picked up by someone. And then that's where I think you get the kind of the imbalance and the burnout and people trying to support others without having the right support themselves.
Yeah, yeah, it's a heavy toll, isn't it? Do you find
Yeah,
that
massively.
with the advent of AI, and I hate to be, AI isn't it great? It's going to solve all our problems because it sure as hell isn't. But with being able to respond to emails in a quicker route without having to sort of type, without having to sort of proofread, to be so careful with the emails that you write, with that support, is that something that you're seeing being taken up by the housing providers?
Yes and no. I still think there's a lot of complication regarding AI, and I'm not fully convinced everybody knows the best way to implement it into their strategy.
Mm,
Because I think, you get a lot of people that saying X jobs will be made redundant because of it. And I think, in over the next 10, 15, 20 years, that's probably true in some cases, but I don't think we're anywhere near
no.
there at the moment. But the way we look at AI is always about how can it support the role that we're doing? How can it help us to better deliver the work that we're doing, not to take away any aspect of the work that we're doing, if that makes sense. And I think if you look at that on, a big housing provider that has several thousand staff, actually trying to work out how AI can support all different divisions, different individuals, and actually get the best out of it. I think it's a bit of a I still think there's a bit of a journey to go on because, and it's the problem. I think that part of the problem is it's evolving all the time.
Yeah,
So once you feel like you've just got the hang of one thing, oh,
yeah.
this new, version 2.0 has come out and then 3.0, and a lot of it comes in like tech tools or tech stacks. And I think you're also then in danger of having too much and you don't know how to implement it all together. So I think there is a space for it, and I do think all organizations should implement it into their strategies, especially for the long term, and how I think it can benefit speeding up complaints or
Mm.
issues at the very, kind of front line. I think that can help speed things up a lot, but I think no, it's still too early to really say what difference it's going to make and how the best way is to utilize it, I think.
You see, I think of it, people go, oh no, it's something that's going to replace us. Well, actually, at this point, and as you say, it may 10, 20 years, maybe it will. But at this point, it's such a valuable tool. If you've got an email that you need to respond to, you know, read the email, please respond to this email addressing this. And suddenly, in what would have taken perhaps 20 minutes, you've got in 30 seconds a detailed response that you can send on to your customers that's proofread. I mean, I'm dyslexic. So for me to go around and write an email, the time it takes, it's like having a great personal assistant. Um, I do think there's a fear of people just responding, copy paste, and all of a sudden we've just got AIs that we don't know about talking to each other rather than taking on board the
Yeah.
information they're in. But I certainly think as a tool, it's something that can streamline the frontline desks, definitely. You know,
Yeah,
but
100%. And it can help. Not everything needs to be dealt with the conversation. And I
no,
think, some of it, and those ones that are a quick fix, or it just needs this bit of information or that bit of information or this appointment booked in.
mm,
The the technology is there to kind of filter, match against calendars and availability and stuff like that. So, I definitely think that can help speed up and streamline the frontline needs, but it's just I think it's people in danger of trying to overcomplicate it. And
yeah,
then I think once you overcomplicate it, you end up kind of neither here or there, and you're kind of
yeah,
somewhere in the middle, which then doesn't allow it to operate the best way it can.
yeah. With it being so hard to remove someone. So if you've made a bad hire, it's very costly, it's very timely, very difficult. What sort of steps do housing providers take to ensure that they are getting that right person?
I think a lot of it comes back to what I did. I think if they're going to use, a lot of them still do a lot of recruitment directly, which
Mm,
for obvious reasons,
yeah.
cheaper way. It's a cheaper way of doing it. But I think a lot of it is done based on direct applicants. So in that way, you're getting the best people that apply. You're
Mm,
not necessarily getting the best person for that job because in my opinion, a lot of people that are the best person for that job are in another job. So
yeah.
it's how can that's hence why there is so many recruiters because a lot of the better recruiters will have kind of a vacancy consultation, really understand the values, the strategy, where they fit in, what's the company's why, and then they will go and market map the best people with that job title in X catchment area and try and find the best person for the job, not the best person that's available at that given time. And I think that's where you get the danger sometimes is you get an applicant, so you're not looking for a recruitment partner, but actually are you just getting the best applicant, not the best person? And then I think that can have a knock-on effect in terms of longevity and the outcome of the role. But then it comes back down to, if they have found the best person for the role, it's doing, values and behavior assessments. It's really, I'm a big believer, don't go to the market for a role if you haven't got the first 3, 6, 9, 12 months lined up and what that onboarding looks like. What support is this role going to need? Do we have the infrastructure for this role to be successful? Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot that needs to be done. You know, in some ways, going to market's the easy bit. It's everything that gets you in a position ready to go to market to recruit for X role.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the other issue I think companies find is recycling staff. You might get head of, I don't know, just to say head of transformation from company X that's been at company Y, going to company Z, and now back to company. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think what the sector really needs is innovation and a new way of thinking. So actually, is the what sectors can align with social housing that you can get different perspective on what's working and what isn't. Um, and I think it's social housing is very social housing focused in terms of the candidates they look for. Where actually, do you know what I mean? If you're looking a finance director, actually someone who's worked in a different, a different sector could actually probably bring a lot of knowledge that
Yeah.
someone who's not been in the social housing sector. Do you know what I mean? And I think, and I think looking at things like that is what can then make sure a candidate, or an individual stick and work, because fundamentally you want to move away from the churn and the
Yeah.
continuous rehiring and stuff like that. Because it doesn't look good on your brand. It's very expensive, and your strategy will be all over the place because there's no one there to see it through. So I think there's a lot of importance when it comes to hiring and making sure you get it right.
So I agree. I echo what you say there about having a fresh pair of eyes coming in from other sectors. And that was something that was highlighted when I was talking to Greg from Places for People. He'd come from a completely different background. And it's, well, why are we doing this? And rather than this is the way we've always done it, it was able to sort of drive through change. And myself, I've never worked in this sector. And yet I look at it and think, why are you doing it that way? That makes no sense.
Yeah,
That wouldn't hold a water in any other sector. Why are you doing it this way? And there does seem to be that sort of mid to higher management who've been in housing. This is the way we do it. This is the Excel spreadsheet we use, and this is how we've always done it. Whereas a fresh pair
yeah.
of eyes coming in, I think that's what the sector needs. Are wages enticing enough for people to come across from other sectors?
I think it's wages, but also what other benefits are there? These people want more than money. Money will get you so far these days, but people want more. They want more time. They want to spend more time with their family. If you're wanting to get new, young, intelligent people involved in the sector, they want different things to what, you know, when I was their age what I wanted. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
about continuously adapting and looking at what more can you give. I think, salaries, I think salaries are probably there could be a bit of, there probably needs to be a slight change, but I think it's about what other offerings are there in terms of, you know, annual, even things as annual leave, for argument's sake. You see so many companies that put annual leave as a benefit or
Yeah.
pension as a benefit.
Car
And it's
park.
like it's a league, yeah, it's a legal requirement. Like that's
Yeah.
not you're not adding anything new to what any other company
Yeah.
would do. And I think, I think the legal is something like 25 days annual leave as like, and that's become just the norm. But
Yeah.
actually what the norm was 20 years ago is different to what it is now. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of change that can be done simply with kind of benefits and what learning and development can you do and can each team leader or manager have a coach and a mentor that can teach, do you know what I mean? I think there's a lot more that can be done other than just, an extra zero or two at the end of your pay slip, because I think that eventually will wear thin, where actually they need to find something else that excites them other
Yeah.
than, you know pay. um and I think the other issue you can find is, I think there does need to be every now and then there needs to be a look at companies need to be like, right, we need to bring some fresh eyes into these positions because our next strategic growth needs a different approach. But the problem is when you always recruit internally, you just do everyone's learned that way. So
Yeah.
when you get someone into a new director of X role who's in charge of a new finance strategy, they've only learned the way that the person before did it. So they're not actually bringing anything new to the table. And I think that's where third party kind of coaching or mentoring to get people to think differently can actually be of real benefit. And benefit, and that what can separate you from other organizations, because that's quite rare to have that available.
And I see a lot of going, Mavis can't cope with the work that she's got, so we put someone else in under Mavis, and then someone else to support them. And suddenly Mavis has got two people that she needs to do one-to-ones for, but she's still got the same Excel spreadsheet. She's just sent them down to two people, and the middle seems to become sort of a bell. Um,
Yeah.
and you're losing it on there. With, since the pandemic, people have become more attuned to wanting to work from home. Now, I think it's great. And when I was working from home, the distractions were there. I'll just put the washing on. I'll just put that. And now we seem to be going, no, we want people back in the office. Is there a pushback from people going, well, I want this job, but I'm only going to come into the office 2 days a week? And does that affect
Um,
productivity?
See, I'm a believer it impacts productivity if you have the wrong setup. And I think it takes a lot of time and policies and structure and getting in the right people to kind of, you know, to work in that capacity, and it tends to be more senior led people that maybe have families or stuff like that, because actually they're also working for a purpose. They could go and do the school run and jump straight back onto work, and it actually
Mm.
allows a lot more, but I think, but not, you could probably ask a lot of people that want it, but deep down in their mindset, they probably know I don't work that great from home,
Yeah,
but they want to do it because why wouldn't you? Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? So I think it comes back to that recruitment piece again around really kind of understanding what you're looking for in that individual as a business. What are you going to be renowned for? What is your strategy over the next 5 years? And can that work? Does everyone need to be in the office, or can it work people remote? Do you know what I mean? I think
mm,
it's looking at the bigger picture. I don't think there's a wrong or a right. And I'm a big believer of, you get people that are like, you can't work, like a lot of people saying you don't need to work in the office or you do. And I don't even know why it's a debate. Like everyone has their own opinion and it works well for some people and not for others. I just
yeah,
don't think you can put a blanket on it. And people that, and ultimately, if the company, and it all comes down to detailed, compelling, articulate job ads, which is another thing that's quite poor within the sector. And ultimately, if the job ad says this role is fully in the office, don't apply for it and moan that you're fully in the office. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Do
You
you know what I
knew.
mean? And you
Yeah.
get people, you knew what you signed up for. And I just think there's plenty of companies out there that full time in the office, fully remote, and a hybrid. And if you've got a preference, go and find a company that works within your preference. And it's to me, it's as simple as that. Um, but if you're an organization that's then struggling to recruit talent, then that's a leadership trait that's got to be open and willing to kind of reconsider what they thought was the right decision. Maybe it's not,
Yeah.
because fundamentally, the talent, if you want the best people for the role, I would argue the majority of them would want some hybrid capacity. Um, and if you only need someone in the office once or twice a week, but you're based in London, but they live in the Midlands and they're happy to commute, but they're the best person for the job. I would prefer the best person for the job that could come into the office twice a week
Yeah.
than the best person who's willing to come into London 5 days a week just because they can come into the office. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a really difficult thing to, thing to kind of really work out. But I think as a business, you just got to be crystal clear on what your objectives are and what you need in place to allow you to get to your objectives. And I think that will move. And I think it probably needs to be reviewed every 6 months or so, just to kind of realign with what the talent market's saying, what the business performance is like, and where are the gaps, and then you kind of have to kind of work out what you need and what's available, I guess.
You say going into London 5 days a week sent an absolute shiver down my spine. That was something that became apparent
Yeah,
to me
and me.
during, yeah, during lockdown. It was like, how much of my life have I wasted commuting? When I was working from home, and I just, bowl of cereal, sit down, off we go. I did appreciate
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but I definitely wasn't as productive. And I know other members of my team and clients that we were working with just getting simple responses back. It was a nightmare. And then everyone was turning up for Zoom meetings, and it was just to sort of just to show the face. We had so
Yeah,
many of them
yeah. No,
penciled in to
100%.
prove we were there.
No,
Do
100%. And I think there's a balance, just to touch on it again, is with that debate is, you know, it's a tricky one as well, because a lot of social housing providers do look to push like apprenticeship schemes and stuff like that. But fundamentally, they're never going to get to the level their potential could show if they also at home
Yeah,
5 days a week.
no, they've got to
Because
learn, haven't
so
they?
there's definitely a balance. And I think I've seen a lot of companies get it right and some will get it wrong, but you just adapt, and I think it's about being open-minded and be willing to adapt to what's needed.
Yeah.
And then I think, you can you get it right, sometimes you don't, but as long as you learn, I think that's all you anyone can do, right?
Would you say that working within the housing sector is for people that want a career rather than people that just want a job? And obviously, you're going to get people that just want a job applying. How do you weed them out? How do you go, look, we need people, this is a career. We want you to maybe start on the ground and work your way up, or we want you to come in from the middle, but this is a career. It's a vocation rather than just a job.
Personally, I think you can get a good feel from someone from literally the first minute you're on the phone.
Right.
Um, because the amount of applicants that we would speak to, they barely know what they're applying for. Do you know what I mean? They kind of set
Yeah.
themselves a task to be like, right, I've been told I need to find a job now, so I'm going to apply for every job
Yeah.
within a 10-mile radius of where I live. And then it's like, oh, I've applied for so many jobs. Which one's this again? Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I think, you know, more kind of frontline level, I would say, but they're the what, it's kind of that's don't have don't have a clear picture in their mind of what they're looking for. And I think, I think it's you don't have to necessarily have a clear picture. You don't necessarily have to be like, right, I'm going to start in social housing and I'm going to have to be here for the next 30, 40 years now.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
That's not realistic, but I think you've got to go into a role with the mindset of I'm going to give it everything and let's see what opportunities present itself. Um, and there's an argument, I think everyone looks at leadership roles as being the most important roles, but the frontline staff roles are the most important
yeah,
because
yeah,
and so getting them hires right is really fundamental. And that's where it goes back to, I think you could use the values piece from any level role because fundamentally, if to do the frontline work and go and speak to residents and stuff like that, you've got to be kind-hearted, understanding, patient,
yeah.
be able to nurture relationships. And that's not easy to find.
And that's
So
the first impression people will have of the organization. It's that customer service
yeah,
agent,
100.
housing officer. That's the first impression, the first human contact I've had with the association. So you need to get that in
Yeah,
place. So your foundation and your trench, that's where the impact really happens. And the rest of the business really should be about supporting those guys.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think the best leaders I see are the ones that spend, you know, 20% of their time on the front line,
Yeah,
understanding what's actually going on, speak to your frontline staff, get to know all of their names, get to know a good proportion of the resident. Obviously, you can't, I know some of these organizations are big. You can't spend all of your time out and
yeah.
about. Do you know what I mean? But you can spend there's no reason why you can't send other people out to kind of be amongst it. So I do think, there's no reason why every given week or month, there can't be senior figures out and about on the ground. And I
Too right.
think
Yeah.
that allows you to make the right changes and the ones that will make the most meaningful impact is by being in amongst it, seeing it, living it, hearing it. Um, and I think to me, that's the biggest bit of leadership that, some of these top level roles can do, in my opinion.
And that is a wonderful place to end it. I think we're absolutely right. The perfect CEO is one who has a complete understanding of the business by interacting with the frontline staff and the residents that are out there and building in that support in place. Josh, it's been lovely speaking to you. Thank you very much indeed. If you have any roles going, all I want is a fair week's salary for a fair day's pay. That's all I'm after. Let's
Oh,
catch
I'll
up and
keep
see
an
how it's
eye out,
going.
my friend.
Let me know when that was out.
Yeah,
Working
take
from home. All right, Josh. Thank you very
no
much
worries.
indeed.
Appreciate that, Ben.
No worries. Have a
Thanks,
good
mate.
week.
Take
Bye bye.
care. Bye now. Bye.